In 1978, a song began to play loudly on British radio stations. It had an elegant rhythm, a different narrative, and a guitar solo that seemed like it never wanted to end. The band, Dire Straits. The song, Sultans of Swing. But what very few people knew was that behind that timeless sound, there was no glamour, no luxury studio, no marketing strategy. There was a rainy night, an almost empty bar, a forgotten band, and a young man with no money, who saw it all. His name was Mark Knopfler, and his story is one of the most unlikely in British rock. Mark Knopfler was born on August 12, 1949, in Glasgow, Scotland. His father was a Hungarian architect and communist who escaped from Nazism. His mother, an Englishwoman, was a teacher. The family moved when he was 7 years old to Newcastle, a working-class city in the northeast of England. From a young age, Mark showed a sharp mind. He liked to write, to observe, to listen. He had a talent for words, but what captivated him the most was the music he heard on the radio. Elvis, Hank Marvin, Django Reinhardt, the sounds of blues and American country. At the age of 16, he asked for his first guitar, a cheap second-hand Hufner, which he would never forget. His thin fingers and his way of playing with his fingers, without a pick, would make him unique years later. But at that time, he was just another kid learning chords in his room. He studied journalism in Leeds and later English literature at the University of Essex. For a while, he worked as a reporter, writing about sports and local news. He was also a teacher. Nothing suggested he would become a guitar legend. But one thing remained constant. Every night, he came back to his guitar. By the mid-70s, Mark had moved to London. He had no record deal, no solid band. He lived in a public housing apartment in Deptford, in the southeast of the city, with his brother David Knopfler and bassist John Ilsley. Money was scarce. The heating barely worked. And yet, there were songs. Mark had notebooks full of lyrics, scattered phrases, ideas. He wrote by observing everyday life, like a journalist with a guitar. But he still hadn't found a voice. He didn't know what story he wanted to tell. Until one night, everything changed. It was just an ordinary night, cold, damp. Mark walked into a small pub in South London. There was a band playing, jazz, Dixie style. No one was looking at them. No one was clapping. The music barely rose above the clinking of glasses. And yet, when they finished, the group's singer stepped up to the microphone and with a mix of irony and resignation said, "Well, that's it. Time to go home. We are the Sultans of Swing." An absurd phrase in that context. There was no one there. There was no swing. There were no sultans. And yet, that was what gave shape to everything. Mark returned to the apartment. He pulled out his old National steel guitar with worn strings, and he began to write. The memory of that night, the absurdity of that phrase, began to turn into lyrics. A forgotten band, playing for the love of music, in front of a crowd that didn't listen. The first version of the song was raw, the rhythm flat, the structure unclear. There was something there, but not enough. It lacked energy, Knopfler would say years later. Until something changed. Mark managed to save up a bit of money, enough to buy a guitar that would change everything, a 1961 Fender Stratocaster. It wasn't just any guitar. It had a brighter, cleaner sound. And when Mark played Sultans of Swing on it, the song came to life. As soon as I played it on that 61 Strat, I knew something had changed, he recalled. The chords flowed. The rhythm emerged. The guitar spoke. Ilsley remembers it vividly. He told me, "Do you remember that song I played the other day? I changed the whole chord structure." And when he played it, it sounded perfect. It was simple, but hypnotic. Nothing was excessive. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Sultans of Swing was not fiction. It was a portrait, a tribute to real musicians, flesh and bone, who played without expecting anything in return. There was Harry with his office job, playing the trumpet as if his life depended on it. There was Guitar George, who knew all the chords, but only played rhythm. No solos, no show, just precision. And in the corner, a group of drunk young men wearing brown bags and platform soles laughed. "This ain't rock and roll," they said. But that didn't matter, because those musicians weren't there to please them. They were there because music was the only thing they had. The song talked about real people, a real place, a night that actually happened. And yet, no one ever said, "Hey, we were the Sultans of Swing." That song is about our band. Never. None of them ever appeared. And maybe that was for the best, because instead of becoming a closed anecdote, the song became universal, an ode to all the invisible musicians of the world, to those who play in empty bars, to those who say goodbye without applause, to the true Sultans of Swing. By late 1977, with no record deal and not a penny of backing, Dire Straits booked time at a small 8-track studio. With barely any resources, they recorded a demo of 5 songs. Among them, Sultans of Swing. It wasn't a luxurious production. There were no famous producers, just the 3 of them. Mark, his brother David, and John Ilsley, plus Pick Withers on drums, a precise drummer with a jazz touch. And a song that breathed truth. The demo was powerful, intimate, raw, but vibrant. It had something no other band of the time offered. A story told with honesty and a guitar that didn't need to scream to dominate. The tape reached the hands of Charlie Gillett, a respected Radio London DJ. He listened to it and didn't hesitate. "I'm going to play this on the air until someone signs this band," he declared. And he kept his word. Every time he could, he played Sultans of Swing on his show. And little by little, the spark grew. Within weeks, Dire Straits caught the attention of Phonogram Records. A concrete offer, a real opportunity, and a new chapter began. With a contract in hand, the band entered Basing Street Studios to record their debut album. The producer assigned was Muff Winwood, brother of the legendary Steve Winwood. But there was a problem. The demo version of Sultans of Swing was already so good that it was hard to improve. At one point, we even thought about releasing the demo as the single, Ilsley recalled. But in the end, they managed to rebuild it from scratch, respecting its spirit, improving its sound, and taking care of every detail. The production was minimal, no frills, no unnecessary layers. The band played almost like they were live. The rhythm guitars were doubled and spread across the stereo. The solo remained clean, without effects. Everything else was pure performance, and that was part of the magic. The song didn't need production. It just needed space to breathe. In May 1978, Sultans of Swing was released as a single in the UK. And nothing much happened. The song didn't explode immediately. The critics didn't destroy it, but they didn't celebrate it either. It seemed like a good song, yes. But in the era of punk and new wave, who wanted to listen to a blues-flavored guitar solo? The band didn't get desperate. They knew what they had in their hands. And then, the unexpected happened. The debut album, simply titled Dire Straits, was released in October '78, and the first sign came from the Netherlands. Gold record. 25,000 copies sold. The phone rang. It was the record company. They're selling records, and they don't even know why. Then came the United States. Radio stations started playing Sultans of Swing from coast to coast. Knopfler's guitar, clean and winding, captivated the American audience. The song was re-released in the UK, and this time, it worked. It was as if the fire had crossed the Atlantic and ignited everything on the way back. In the US, Sultans of Swing reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. In the UK, it climbed to number 8, and the guitar solo became legendary. In 2008, Guitar World ranked it number 22 among the best solos of all time. Rolling Stone placed it at number 32. Knopfler built the solo like a story within a story. First, 30 seconds of soft scales, then a pause, and after that, another 40 seconds of arpeggios that seemed improvised, but were exactly where they needed to be. It was blues, but also jazz. It was technical, but emotional. It was contained, and at the same time, epic. By early 1979, the album was already a phenomenon. Dire Straits, without making much media noise, had become one of the most important British bands of the moment. And Mark Knopfler went from writing football notes for local newspapers to being compared with Eric Clapton. Even Bob Dylan called him. He asked him to play on his new album, Slow Train Coming. And he chose drummer Pick Withers to join as well. Everything had changed, but the soul remained intact. For many, Sultans of Swing was the beginning of everything. The song that changed it all. But for the band, it was something deeper. Some people say it was luck, Ilsley recalled years later. But what does luck really mean? It was a great song. We had talent, and we worked incredibly hard. The only way to achieve something like this is to commit yourself to what you love. The curious thing is that the real Sultans of Swing never appeared. They never said, "Hey, that song is about us." And that gave the story even more power. Because instead of having a concrete face, it became a symbol. An ode to all the musicians in the world who play in empty bars, who end their show with a simple "thank you," even though no one was listening. And who, despite everything, keep playing. Because the soul isn't measured in applause. There's something poetic about the fact that Sultans of Swing became a global hit while honoring a group of musicians who were never heard from again. It turned into more than just a song. It became a legend.